Okay, so we have two legs make your right angle, and the hypotenuse is always, always, always across from the right angle. So in order to find the hypotenuse, you have to have a right angle, and so in order to do Pythagorean theorem, we have to have right triangles. This will only work with the right triangle. What happens with the Pythagorean theorem? Often we label, hey, that's our hypotenuse, but we also call it our C value. We also call it our C, and then we have A and B. With our legs, it doesn't matter which one's A and which one's B, but we need to know that one of those is A, one of those is B, so make sure you get this label. Pythagorean theorem says A squared plus B squared equals C squared. The hypotenuse is always C. So maybe make a note. See? This is always, always, always going to be the hypotenuse. So I give you this triangle, I'm like, hey, solve for x. What is x? It is our hypotenuse. Find your right angle, draw on the arrow. That's my C. Or if you want to say, hey, that's your hypotenuse, do it. And then this must be my A and this must be my B, or vice versa, B and A. Doesn't matter on those two. The formula says, or the theorem says, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. What did I label my A as? 8 squared plus 6 squared equals x squared. Here's a little cheat. We've got our numbers over here on the board already. 8 squared is 64. 6 squared, 36, equals our x squared. If they're on the same side of the equals, we can add them. 64 plus 36, 100 equals x squared, square root, x equals 10. I put it up here, I'm like, oh, it's 10, it's the longest side, that makes sense. Number 1, it says identify the unknown side as a leg or hypotenuse. Then find the unknown side length of the right triangle and write your answer in simplest radical form. I don't want decimals unless we're finding area. So it says simplest radical form. What is this x? Leg or hypotenuse? It's a leg. Here's another leg. This would be my hypotenuse because it's across from the right angle. So label it your C. So this is my C. Here's my A. Here's my B. Fill in your blanks. A squared. So we have x squared plus b squared equals my c squared. So simplify it first. What is 3 squared? 9. What's 5 squared? 25. How do I get x by itself? We just did this one also at the start. Subtract your 9. X squared equals 16. Square root, x is 4. So I plug it in here, 3, 4, and then my hypotenuse is still the longest, so it's 5. Number 2, I solve for x. X is a leg or a hypotenuse. It's our hypotenuse, it's your C value, and then we have A and B. Set it up. A squared plus B squared equals C squared, or your x squared, yeah. 6 squared is 36. 4 squared is 16. They're on the same side, so we can combine like terms. Square root, square root of 52. Decimal, right? I don't want a decimal. Brent is on it. He's moving through this. He's like, well, what goes into 52? 52 divided by 49, 36. He goes through his list. He ends up at 4. He's like, the first whole number we come to is 4. 4 goes into 52 how many times, Brent? 13 times. Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of 13 we can't do, so we just bring it down. You get 2 square root of 13. How about here? A 16-foot ladder rests against the side of the house, and the base of the ladder is 4 feet away. Approximately how high above the ground is the top of the ladder? This is a great question. I would ask you to probably draw the picture of. Without doing all that work, can we kind of do a little process elimination? What's my answer? So this is 4 feet. This is 16. I want to know, how tall is this? C is always the hypotenuse, right? 16 is my hypotenuse. What do we know about the hypotenuse? It's always the highest. Why is it 15.5? It's only one lower than 16. 16 is always the largest side. 20 is more than that. That can't be 20. It can't be 16.5. The only one, as Drew said, that's less than 16 is 15.5. But some of you are like, Ms. Drew, prove it. How do you know for sure? Are we definitely right? Try it. That's my C. Then we have A and we have B. Show me your work just to be sure. 4 squared plus x squared equals 16 squared. 4 squared is 16. 16 squared, 256. Subtract your 16 over. X is 15.49. That's not the same as 15.5. It rounds. It rounds. Very good. It does round to 15.5. Nice. If this was like on an ACT, MME kind of test though, you could go through, you're like, I know hypotenuse has to be the longest, all these are larger, so this other leg has to be 15.5. Keep moving, go to the next question. 4. The Pythagorean theorem is only true for what type of triangle? Right. Pythagorean theorem only works with right triangles because you have to have a right angle in order to find your hypotenuse. Example 3 says find the area of the isosceles triangle. What's the formula for area of a triangle? Let me back up a second. Let me show you this. If I give you a rectangle, it's your length times your width, right? But length times width gives me all of this in here, correct? Okay. With a triangle, I divide by 2 because I only want half of my rectangle. With a triangle, I go length times width, or base times height, and then I divide it by 2 because I only want half of a rectangle for our triangle. Anyway, that's the theory behind it. Make a note on your paper, area of a triangle. Formula for you, base times height, divide by 2. Sometimes you'll see it written as 1/2 times base times height, or 0.5 times base times height, 10, and this is the base. Good, good, good. My base is 10. It's always divided by 2. Do I know the height? Here's my height. It's unknown right now, right? So here's where we've been working with Pythagorean theorem. Now we're taking Pythagorean theorem and we're applying it to all these different situations. We're going to use it throughout Algebra 2. We're going to use it throughout the rest of geometry. So we need to be able to get this. I'm going to take this triangle out and redraw it over here. You do this thing. My hypotenuse is 13 in here. This side is 5. And I want to know, what is my h? What's my height of that? So label it. Here's my hypotenuse. That's my c. We have an a. We have a b. So after this, I'm going to say, well, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. 5 squared is 25. H squared, 13 times 13, 169. Subtract your 25 over. H squared equals 144. H is 12. My H is 12. So this right here is 12. What do we know? The height of our triangle is 12. What do we know? The height of my triangle is 12. Some of you may have said this. 10 times 12 is 120, divided by 2 gives us 60. I'm talking about meters square, and that's my area. The area is 60 square meters. Yes, because area is like how many square tiles, how many square units fill up our figure. Good. Good questions. Cool? How about here? Find the area of the triangle. Always start out with the area. I'm like, oh, area, that's my base times my height, divided by 2. What's the base of that triangle? 30 feet. Yep, 30 times my height divided by 2. Do I have my height? No. So we take our triangle, we pull it out, and we redraw it. Doesn't matter which one you pick. They're both going to be the same. I do need to see it redrawn, though. This is 18. Here's my right angle. How big is this? 15. How do we get 15? 30 split in half divided by 2 gives us 15. And I want to know my height. I want to know this distance right here. What's the hypotenuse? What's the C? 18. There's my C value. Then we have our A, we have our B. So we have A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Simplify. 15 squared, 225, 18 squared, 324. Thanks. Subtract. Those cancel. H squared equals 99. We square root. H equals, say it again. You simplified it. You did not square root of 9 square root of 11 to simplify it, to keep it in radical form, right? Sure, we always do that, right? You're like, oh, we don't want decimals, Miss Root, what are you doing? Here's my thing, and I'm glad you brought that up. When I talk about area, if I tell you something is 10 square root of 11 units, what kind of number is that? Do we know how much surface area is there? 10 square root of 11, we're like, well, what is that? When I talk about area, now it's going to be okay to use decimals. No, I'm so glad that you said that because that just caught me here. So as a decimal, what is this though? Square root of 99 is 9.94. You know how I know Courtney's right with that decimal? This is nearly 100, isn't it? Square root of 100 is 10. This isn't quite there, so that's not quite 10. So here's my H value. Here's my H that I need to plug it in for my height. We get 9.94. Then we can multiply it out. 149.1 square feet is our area. So does this make sense? It's a little bit more relevant to us to talk about this room is 149.1 square feet, is what we could say, rather than like using our square roots. It's always in square units, feet squared. It's not the number squared, it's just the square units is what we're referring to. Good, good, good. Good stuff today. I like the questions a lot. Number 6, you guys tried this one on your own. I'm going to do it up here, and then we can compare. Do we get 240 square meters? The whole base is 20 times the height divided by 2. Some of you are going to catch this. Watch real quick. Little bit of mental math. What's 20 divided by 2? 10. 10 times 24 is 240. Common Pythagorean triples. I'm not super concerned about these, but I want to show you. Some of you will like this. We have some Pythagorean triples, some numbers that come up all the time. You might have a 3, 4, 5 triangle. or 5, 12, 13 triangle, or one of those 4. So what happens is, this is like our legs and 5 is our hypotenuse. So if I go 3 squared plus 4 squared, it will equal 5 squared. These are ones that work every single time. If you have 2 legs and it's like, what's the hypotenuse on this picture? You can just write down 5, because it's a common one. People know those. People learn those. Mrs. Housley and I will sometimes refer, it's like, oh, that's a 3, 4, 5 triangle. Some of you will recognize that. 3 squared is 9. 4 squared is 16. 5 squared is 25. 9 plus 16 is 25, so we have 25 equals 25, and it works. Okay? And actually, here's a whole list of numbers. All of these are called Pythagorean triples. What does this look like in action? If I have 24 and 10 and I say, well, what's the hypotenuse of this? What is it? These last numbers are all the hypotenuse. Here it is. The hypotenuse is 26. You don't have to show me any work. But to go through and solve it just like we have been doing, you're not wrong. So some of you are like, this doesn't make any sense. Don't sweat it, because you can do the math for this and figure out it's 26. Others of you, you're like, oh, I know that number. I recognize that sequence, and you get your third, and it just works. Cool?